For the past 25 years, I have been working full-time as a freelancing sound engineer, composer, musician and sound artist. A few years ago, I was affected by hearing loss and severe tinnitus. I was completely devastated and went through a life crisis. And I was convinced that my life working with music was over. I mean, who would even consider hiring a sound engineer with hearing aids? In this video, I would like to share my 5 best tips and my story of how I managed to return to a life working with music and sound even though I am having hearing loss, hearing aids and severe tinnitus. If you're new to this channel, my name is Moneeo, and together with my partner in crime, Moneeo, we are running this channel. We talk about the music we create, how we work in the studio, instruments that we build, stuff that we are renovating, basically how we make a living out of music. One big part of my income comes from the work as a sound engineer. I started my first professional recording studio in 1990 and ended up working with live music since the last 25 years. As a sound engineer, our hearing is our most important tool. People are paying us money to listen on stuff, tweaking sound to make it sound good. Right. My biggest fear in life have always been to get hearing loss. So today we are going to talk about hearing loss and tinnitus. As you remember, during the pandemic, the business just shut down. Every business shut down. After some time in lockdown, I got the virus as well. I was really sick for 2 weeks. One time, the ambulance came to us and had to check because I had difficult breathing, and that is just a bit scary. And at the same time, I felt lucky because I didn't have to go to a hospital. Sometime after that, I started to notice that something happened with my hearing. It wasn't like it has been before. Something was going on, but I couldn't figure out what. And I had a wake-up moment. It was a beautiful summer day. Irene and I went out for a walk in nature, and suddenly she says, "Wow, can you hear all the grasshoppers? It sounds amazing." When I got that question, 2 things popped into my mind. The first thing was, I didn't want to ruin that beautiful day by telling Irene the truth that I could not hear one grasshopper at all. And the other thing, I did not want to lie to Irene either. I didn't want to say no and I didn't want to say yes. So my reply was something like, At that moment, I realized that, come on Per, it's time to check your hearing, that this is not good at all. In the same week, I did a sound engineer gig at a local church. It's one of these giant, beautiful stone churches that we have here in Sweden. I was there to mix a live music concert. I was also there to do the sound for one priest. They're going to preach for a small audience. The PA system was from the 80s something. The head mic was maybe from the 80s as well. Maybe not the best situation, but hey, how hard can it be? The priest comes into the room, he starts to talk, and I start to raise my fader so that we can hear his voice. And suddenly, I can see everybody in the audience is just pulling their heads up to their ears. At the same moment, I realize there's a feedback going on in this room that I can't hear. At the same second, I'm so aware of that the feedback that lavalier mics are doing is around 10k hertz, and that is just a nasty frequency. And I realized at that moment I can't hear 10k anymore. And that was such a scary moment that me, as the sound engineer, the guy who are able to do something about the feedback, that I couldn't hear it. That was just so scary, and during the rest of that gig, I decided right away, I will never ever put myself or the audience in this situation again. If I'm having such a bad hearing, I should not be mixing anything at all. I went to my local healthcare center and did my first hearing test. They put the headphones on, I got these buttons to press whenever I hear a beep, and I felt it went pretty okay actually. When the doctor looked at my audiogram, he had a quick look and then he just shook his head and sent me right away to a hearing specialist in Stockholm for deeper investigations. At this point, I at least had some validation that something were a problem with my hearing and that we had to do something about it. So after a couple of weeks, I went to the specialist in Stockholm and the same procedure again. This time it was serious testing equipment. They put me inside this soundproof booth. They put me on the headphones and the buttons to press whenever I hear a beep. I was so excited and I was so freaking ready when I sat there with the headphones and the two buttons and just waiting to hear the beeps so I could press the buttons. I was so ready. I was so focused. So when I heard the first beep, I pressed fast as hell. I heard a second beep and I pressed even faster and it kept going. And I thought, well, this is working out just fine. I can hear every beep. I nailed them all. I was super excited. After 1 minute, the nurse comes opening the door. She takes off my headphone and she has this kind of worried look. And she looked at me and she said, "You know that this isn't a world championship, right?" And I was just, what do you mean? And the nurse says, "Well, you are pressing the buttons all the time, and I haven't even started yet." Oh my God. Okay. So the beeps I heard in my head and were pressing was not the tone from the test. It was basically my tinnitus playing me a joke. We started the test all over again, and this time I really listened to the tones that I 100% could say come from the headphones. When we were done, I came out and we had a look at the audiogram together, and I could see this is not good. From 2K it was just going down. I was sent in to the doctor and he immediately understood that I work with sound so that I understand the graph of the audiogram. And he really didn't tell me if my hearing was good or bad, since he understood that I could see it for myself at the audiogram. And suddenly he says, "Do you want to make an appointment to try out hearing aids today, or do you want to wait a week or two?" And it wasn't until I heard that sentence that it finally came to me. When he said the word hearing aid, it was so clear that, fuck, this is for real. My hearing is fucked up and I will need hearing aids to make it day by day. After the doctor told me that, I actually don't remember how I left the building. I remember how I was standing outside on the street and just realizing, hearing aids. God, I need to have hearing aids for the rest of my life. That is how bad my hearing is. And the weird thing at that moment is that a thought came into my mind. I could just visualize myself in the future. I was entering an arena. My friends were there. They were rigging a stage. Busy, busy, busy. To just visit them and say hello to my friends. And I came there with my bad hearing, disturbing them in their job. And it felt like when I stepped into the arena that I was totally worthless because my hearing was bad. They couldn't use me to anything good at all. At that point, I was pretty certain that I will not be able to work with music again. And I felt like a bad person that isn't worth anything at all. And I started to think like, well, it's like I'm one of these other people, you know, these handicapped people, the disabled people, until I realized what the hell am I thinking? It's not like I'm one of these handicapped person, disabled person. I am one of these handicapped person. I am a person with a disability. That is me now. And when that sank into my mind, I just could feel how my tears were starting to drip. I was just so sad and started to cry all alone on the street in a beautiful summer day in Stockholm. And I just felt worthless. I wasn't worth a shit to me at that moment. Fortunately, a couple of minutes later, I started to realize that here I am standing. I got the message that my hearing is bad, and all I can think of is how other people would see me, how other people would think that I am worthless and of no use anymore. And I realized how crazy that is, how fucked up that is. Instead of me figuring out how I will feel as good as I can in this new situation, I'm standing there and thinking about how other people would see me, what other people would think of me, that other people would think that I'm worthless. And I realize how crazy that is. I'm a freaking human being that just got the message that I'm having a disability. And when the doctor leaves me with a statement that I will need hearing aids, I get so afraid what other people will think about me. I know for sure I don't know even one sound engineer that are wearing hearing aids. Do you know any? And I mean, I realized that of course I am not the only sound engineer with a hearing issue. There are a big part of the population that have hearing difficulties. And I mean, we who work with music and sound all day long, there must be even more of us. And yet I have never seen a sound engineer with a hearing aid. And that's what made me afraid. I'm still valuable as a human, so I decide right away that I will take every help that I can get from the healthcare and from the technical devices that might be able and out there. And I realized that today hearing aids are probably really high-tech. I will say yes and welcome to all help there is. And I will welcome it into my life. If I will look silly with hearing aids, so be it. Now it's time to focus on how I feel, to make me feel good as a human. And I don't care what anyone else will think of me. Shouldn't we who work in the music industry have the same right to get the same help as everyone else when it comes to hearing issues? If there are some medical treatments or some therapy or whatever, I will say yes to that. If there are some technical equipment like hearing aids that can help me through the day, I will say yes to that. Welcome. And that became a starting point where I decided to make changes in my life where in the first place I focus on to make myself feel as good as I can as a human being. And I was starting to see it like a challenge that, hey, maybe I can be the first sound engineer with a hearing aid to actually make it work. I did a lot of Googling and research during that period to see how are other sound engineers dealing with this situation. And it was so strange. I could find so few examples of sound engineers actually talking about their hearing loss. Yeah, I totally get it. If you're getting hearing loss as a sound engineer, you're afraid of losing jobs if a client gets to know that you have a bad hearing. That was what I thought. So of course sound engineers are afraid of talking about their hearing loss. Some people have the strategy of letting their hair grow so that the hearing aids won't be visible to other people. Other people have the strategy of buying these really small hearing aids that put into the ear canal and is hardly visible to the human eye. They are small, but the sound and the battery time is not as good as the larger ones that you put behind your ears. And I start to think about what strategy I should use and how I would deal with this when talking to my clients. What if the client can see if I'm having a hearing aid? What will they think? What will they say? Will I lose the tour? Will I lose the job? And I realized if the client would see me with a hearing aid without knowing it, it would be a very weird and strange situation. Or should I tell the clients that I trust best, or the biggest clients that I'm having hearing aids, and not talk with other people about it? But when musicians find out that I'm having a hearing aid and I don't talk about it, it would be a very strange situation. So I choose a completely different strategy that could either be a really good idea or it could be a total disaster. But I felt that I had no other option. I choose to be very open about it, to tell the whole world that I am having hearing loss and I'm now using hearing aid to compensate for my hearing loss. Instead of letting my hair grow, I got this haircut, 6 mm, so that my hearing aid would be visible, not hiding it at all. The opposite. Make it as visible as I can. Talk with everybody about my situation. Talk about everybody that I'm wearing hearing aids. And to do it in a proud way, that means that I am taking responsibility for my hearing and I'm doing something to make it better. Instead of just ignoring it and don't get a hearing aid and pretend that everything is like it is. There are so many sound engineers out there that are having hearing loss of natural reasons, but they don't have the confidence to get hearing aids because they feel they would look silly, stupid. So my strategy was to be very open, tell the whole world about my situation and what I'm doing for it. So I cut my hair and I made a very emotional post on Facebook for all my friends, for all my colleagues, where I described my situation and that I were going to get hearing aids. And to be honest, I had no idea what their reaction could be like. Would it be just silence? Or would anyone have the guts to say something? And the result was overwhelming. There were so many comments, there were so many likes, so many hearts. And the people who commented, it was not like they were sorry for me. They were just cheering and saying, yeah, go for it. That's the way to do it. Everybody should do like this. And of course it warmed my heart. I get so many positive reactions. And I who thought that people were going to see me as a worthless, useless person with bad hearing. And instead I get to see these comments that I see that they understand that I care about my hearing, that I'm accepting my hearing for what it is, and are doing whatever I can to make it better using hearing aids. So the tip number 1 is to be very open and talk about your hearing if you're having issues. Talk about your hearing even if you don't have any issues. Let other people know your situation. There are 15 to 20% of the human beings that are having some problem with their hearing. It's kind of natural. We who work with music have to start talking about these kind of things. Otherwise, we can't get any help when or if it happens something. When I got my first hearing aids, I was just impressed how small they actually are. And if you look at them, these have an array of 3 microphones sitting here that are able to detect which direction the sound comes from. They have a super advanced processor that you can program with multiband compressors and a really advanced equalizer that works in different sound levels, which are totally different from the ones that we work with in music production. It has noise reduction. It has the ability to focus the sound to any direction using the microphone array. It also has Bluetooth that connects to my iPhone, where I can stream sound back and forth, so I can answer telephone hands-free all day long if I want. And it has this tiny speaker that has such a frequency response that is just crazy. I can't believe how they do it. And a really small battery. This one is rechargeable and it lasts for the whole freaking day. It's unbelievable. And when I put them in, it's hardly visible. I mean, you can see the thread going into the ear, but I mean, it's not super visible. You can see a little bit behind the ear, probably. I'm not sure if it's showing up here now, but small. The second tip I have is acceptance. And acceptance can be a really difficult word to grasp. It has nothing to do that you have to like the situation, but you have to accept the situation. If you are able to accept the situation, then you are able to do something about it. So acceptance is so important. Accept it for yourself. Admit it for yourself that, okay, this is the status it's right now. At this time, I was offered a job in the local theater. And I mean, it was a pandemic, so to be offered a sound engineer job, that's nothing you turn down. So I told the theater manager that, yeah, I really like to have this job, but you must be aware of that I am having these hearing issues. I'm having hearing loss, I will be getting hearing aid, and I might be having difficulty to do some of the jobs. And the manager said, okay, but do you think you can do it? And I said, yeah, I don't know yet, but I think so, and I will do my very best. And the manager said, well, great, let's do it. And that shows that most people you meet, they don't even care if you're having a hearing aid, if you're having hearing loss, if you're having tinnitus. They don't care. If you think you can do it, perfect. During that period at the theater was so fascinating, I could have it as my own personal lab. And I started to experimenting using different kinds of technology to help me mix, even though my hearing was not the best. So I found out a couple of the plugins and the software that I've been using in my day-to-day work. I could use it for other purpose to validate that my mixes were in the right place. And I have a couple of softwares and technical solutions that I would like to talk about in a future episode. So if you haven't already, it could be a good time now to hit the subscribe button to this channel. And that is tip number 3. Welcome all possible technology that can help you. Because there are technology that can help you. Some of them you probably already have, and some that you might have to invest. Around the time I got COVID for the second time, after that second COVID time, I started to notice that my tinnitus just raised. And like most people in the music industry, I have been having tinnitus for 15 years, and yeah, it's there. I can notice if I think about it, but it's not worse than that. But this time it was just skyrocketing. It was so loud. And I was super sensitive to sounds. And it didn't have to be loud sounds. It could be just the newspaper in the morning is a terrible sound. Just the flow of the tap water was a nightmare. Just this small everyday sound was just, it sounded distorted and loud. And that means that I got hyperacusis, which is pretty common if you got tinnitus, that your ears get more sensitive. And I kept doing the few concerts jobs that were available at that point. And there was one concert. It was a large Christmas concert, a couple of thousand in the audience. And when I walked into the arena to do the sound check, they were already sound checking on stage 1. As soon as I get into the room, I just feel how the tinnitus rise. I just feel the distorted sound of the other stage. And I could not believe, how the heck am I going to be able to do this concert? This is crazy. So not only having the hearing loss, now I'm also having the tinnitus and the hyperacusis, super sensitive to sound, that is just bringing me down. This is just ruining my working life. That is just ruining everything I hear. I realize, of course, I can't cancel that performance. I can't leave the band and cancel that night. But at that moment, I decide for myself that, okay, I'm going to do the concerts I have planned for this week, and that's it. After that week, I will cancel every gig I have booked. I can't do this anymore. I can't. I could make this concert because I've worked with that band for so long, so I know everything about how they sound, and I could almost do a sound check without hearing their sound. I know them so well. So I knew I could survive these gigs, but after that, cancel everything and just take a break. It was not like a difficult decision. I absolutely had no other options. It was the only way to do it. I couldn't do it anymore. And the strange thing is that I have managed to keep on working with hearing loss, with hearing aids, by using technologies, computers and softwares to make me be able to mix, even though I'm having hearing loss. But that a thing like tinnitus just knocked me down. That tinnitus that forced me to stop working. So I canceled all the gigs and just went on a sick leave for 18 months. Yeah. The first day on the sick leave, I just went out to the forest to have a walk. I just wanted to have quiet. I didn't want to hear any traffic, music. I just wanted to hear the sound of nature. Quiet, peaceful. And that was the best walk I have ever done in my whole life. Right there, I decided to change my life completely. To just focus on things that make me feel good. I decided that I wanted to spend more time in nature. I had no idea what I was going to do in nature, but I knew that I wanted to spend more time in nature, in silence, in healthy environments. And so I did. I even challenged myself to sleep under the bare sky with no tent, just me on the ground, one time every month for the whole year. Summer, winter, autumn, spring, whatever. And I even started a YouTube channel about doing this kind of projects where I sleep in the nature, looking up at the sky. I put a link down here if you want. There are not many episodes, but I really love that project. What struck me at that period was that how the heck am I going to continue work with music, now when I have tinnitus and hyperacusis. And one thing that came to me very, very clear is that fuck music. If you can't work with music, so be it. I mean, hey, it's just music. Now it's time to make you feel as good as you can. I have to focus on myself to create a life situation where I feel as good as I can as a human being in the first place. Maybe I can play something in my home studio later on, but hey, who knows? And I think that was an important decision to do. That maybe music isn't that important that I think it is. That even if I don't make music, I can still have a good feeling about myself. I can still live a really good life and make the focus on myself. I started to research so much about how tinnitus works and what kind of solution there is. And as you know, there are no cure for tinnitus. Let's repeat that again. There are no cure for tinnitus. And yet, when you start to search the internet, you see so many suggestions of things that you should eat, vitamins or strange pills, or buy some strange technology or whatever that are promising cure of tinnitus. But as we all know, there are no cure of tinnitus. As I mentioned earlier, I took all the help that I could from the healthcare. I said yes to everything. I had therapists, I had psychologists working with me. At one point, I had 2 therapists and 1 psychologist working with me on different level of my life. Because it's not only the hearing issues that are the problem, it's what's coming with it. And for me, just like many others, it resulted in depression. It's resulted in a life crisis that I have to go through. That's why 2 therapists and why psychologists. I searched internet for all the answers on how to fix tinnitus, or rather make a decent living even though I were having tinnitus. I've tried so many things so you can't believe. I stopped drinking coffee for 1 whole year, and the result was positive in some way, but the tinnitus was the same. We stopped eating meat for 1 whole year, and the result was, we lived a lot healthier, but the tinnitus was still there. I tried so many different things, and it didn't affect tinnitus one thing at all. Until I got the chance to participate in a cognitive behavioral therapy. Yeah. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. That's a process that you do for a period of 6 months together with a psychologist, and you have lots of different tasks that you're doing over the 6 months. And CBT does not make tinnitus go away. No, because that's impossible and we know it. But what CBT does is retraining your brain on how tinnitus affects your life. And that is just truly amazing. You're able to retrain your brain so that it won't listen to the sound of tinnitus. Yeah, retrain the brain. It's called neuroplasticity, and it's all about how our brain actually is reprogramming itself constantly, all the time, without us knowing it. But doing a CBT therapy, we are able to reprogram our brain as we want to. It's almost impossible to measure the sound of tinnitus. You can't record it. There are specific kind of tinnitus that you can measure with really, really advanced equipment, but for most of us, we can't measure it. But you can measure how tinnitus is affecting your life. And that is what is important. By doing a tinnitus handicap inventory survey, THI, you can measure how bad tinnitus affects your life. And it goes from 0 to 100. If you get 0 on a THI, your life is not affected at all. If you get 100, tinnitus affects your life in every aspect of your life. Before the therapy started, I made this THI and my value was 96 out of 100. That's bad. That's really bad. Doing the CBT therapy, I was told, is not for everyone. And I totally get it now. It takes a lot of job. You have to practice for about 1 hour every day with the exercise you get. And to get access to the CBT therapy is so difficult here in Sweden. You can't just apply for it. It's the doctors that have to send you there. And when I wanted to have the CBT therapy, it was so difficult to get the doctors to apply for the CBT therapy. And when they finally applied, I get a response, it's a waiting time of 3 years. 3 years. And that is just devastating. Waiting 3 years until I can do anything else in my life. Whatever. They applied to me. I got a message that I have to wait for about 3 years. I was having a close contact with a psychologist that had this CBT training, and I convinced him that sound is my job. I can't wait 3 years. And after a couple of months, I got a call from this psychologist telling me that there's one person that canceled their spot in the CBT therapy. It will start in a couple of weeks, and you can get that spot. Do you want it? If I want it, that was everything that I wanted. I said yes, totally. And I went on to the CBT therapy, and it felt like winning the lottery. I felt so freaking lucky to get a spot on this therapy that is so difficult to get access to here in Sweden. I mean, I could pay for it myself. I looked into it, and it's a couple of €1,000. I was ready to do it, but then I got this spot, and I felt so grateful. CBT therapy is pretty demanding. There's a lot of pressure on yourself. You have to do a lot of job yourself, and you have to deal with situation. You have to question things in your life. I had some ups and downs that were just crazy. It was literally a roller coaster doing the CBT training. And after 6 months, when the therapy was over, I made another tinnitus handicap inventory. The same tinnitus handicap inventory that I did before the therapy. Before the therapy, I was at 96 out of 100. And after the therapy, I was at 54. And that is just amazing results. It means that after the therapy, only by retraining my brain, tinnitus just half of what it was before. I didn't hear my tinnitus as often as I did. Very often the tinnitus sounded less, even though it was the same. I didn't suffer from it as much. My hyperacusis was better. I could listen to lots of different sounds. And generally, my life improved so much that it's unbelievably just by retraining my brain, making my brain think in different ways. So at this point, I was able to actually try to do some sound engineer jobs, do some conferences with only voices and not loud music. And it worked so very well. I just could work for maybe 1 day a week. I had to rest very much, but the therapy helped me so much. Another key element during this period was to learn meditation, mindfulness, and how to relax. It sounds silly to learn how to relax, but the fact is that I could not relax completely during the period, which also inspired me to deep dive into meditation and mindfulness. And I also started to be curious about sound again, and I tried to participate in different kinds of sound therapy, where they were using gongs and crystal bowls and Tibetan bowls, different kinds of sound journeys or sound baths. And I was so hooked on how they could improve my tinnitus, my hearing health, and get me back on a good track in life. I hadn't been visiting a concert as audience for years at that point. But now I started to build up courage that I could visit concerts again. I were using big earmuffs to protect my hearing. And that's a completely different story. How to choose earmuffs that is working with hearing aids. That could be a video series itself, I'm telling you. We might have to do that in the future. But I was slowly building myself back into life with music. It was at this point that I realized how much I had missed the art of creating and recording music. It was a recording studio back in the 90s that got me into this business, and I realized how much I missed it. So just my passion, that is also the reason why I bought this 30-year-old analog mixing console. Just so that I can start mix again. In the old good-fashioned way. And this console is a truly renovating project in this channel that, if you haven't checked it out, you have to. And I started to get back my inspiration for making music, for working with music. And as you remember, when the pandemic left, it started to come more and more sound jobs. And my old clients, they kept calling me, even though they knew I was having hearing aids. My clients kept calling, even though they knew I having hearing aid. And I who thought that the clients would recline me as soon as they would know that I was having hearing aid. They didn't. They kept calling me. In fact, one of my clients, when they get to know that, okay, I'm having bad hearing, high tinnitus, I'm having hearing aid, I can't do all the jobs I've been doing before, then they said, okay, great. Then you maybe could do this QLab programming instead. You don't have to be in a full concert. It's pre-production. So when he got to know that I was having hearing issues, he still knew what I was capable of and saw the potential of using me in other different situations. It was the same during the pandemic, when I got the chance to start doing live recordings, when everybody were supposed to stream. I got a contact with the full orchestra that we could make live recordings of. And it was just like coming back to the 90s, working with the recording, working in the studio. It was so inspiring. To find out that I don't have to stand in a nightclub 4 o'clock in the morning. I can do this kind of job in the daytime. And that made me so inspired that maybe I can continue working with music and sound in a totally new way. And that's where I am today. Some of my customers even make use of my hearing aids as my unique selling point. When it comes to installations of sound systems, I can see it from a disabled person's perspective and make the best installations for people with disabled hearing. When trying the hearing loop in a new installation, we can validate it with measuring how strong it is and also check it with my hearing aids. A real live check. I will probably never ever be at a nightclub at 4 o'clock in the morning mixing loud party bands anymore, but you know what? I don't miss it a bit. Now I want to create a working life where I can feel good. From time to time I visit concerts nowadays, and every time I bring my big earmuffs. I don't feel ashamed of wearing them at the concert, because now I don't care what people think. I'm there to enjoy the concert. So that's tip number 4. Protect your hearing. Yeah, it's a boring tip, I know, but it's so super clear. When something happens with your hearing, you really want to protect what you're having left. Yeah. And we come to tip number 5, and that is focus on creating a good life. Either with music or without music, but focus on creating a good life. A good life that makes you feel as good as you can. Because hey, I mean, music is just a little part of the life. The most important thing is create a life that makes you feel good. I truly believe there are so many people out there on the roads not feeling well, but continue to touring, making music, maybe not protecting themselves, but just keep on doing whatever they have been doing without even focusing on how they feel. If you make a situation where you feel as good as you can, and if your passion for music is lost, chances are good that if you're creating a good life for yourself, that's healthy, not stressful, then your inspiration will come. So today I work with music in a slightly different way than before. I'm using my hearing aids. I can't mix without my hearing aids. I thought hearing aids would be the end of a life with music. Now I realize that hearing aids are in fact the answer to how I am able to continue to work with music, even though I am having a hearing loss. So if you are suspecting that you might have a certain degree of hearing loss, my recommendation is go and check it. It's not dangerous. If you need hearing aids, get them. It's the best thing you can do. And that's the tools that can make you keep working with music. And if you are suffering from tinnitus, and I mean, who in the music business is not suffering from tinnitus? Then keep remember that you don't have to suffer from tinnitus as much as you do today. There are methods of how to deal with tinnitus, how to make a living with tinnitus. You don't have to suffer as much as you do. I promise you that. This was a pretty long video about how I deal with hearing loss, tinnitus and hyperacusis. And I hope that you can see that it's possible to keep on working with music. It's possible to create a good life even when your hearing is maybe isn't as good as you want it to be. And I guess you can hear that I've been talking for a long time. My throat is going to, But this is a topic that I'm so passionate talking about that I will probably do more content about this in the future. And I think it's so important that we start talking to each other about it. And I would love to hear your comments, your thoughts here in the comments below. If you want, share your story. If you're having experience, it's so valuable for us all when we start talking and sharing information. So I guess this will be a topic that I'll be talking a little bit more about on this channel as well. So if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, click the like button and share your story in the comments. We'd love to hear it. And I'm so grateful that you watched this video. This is a really important topic and we should not ignore it. We should not be afraid of it. I mean, our hearing will be degraded over the years anyway. So let's make the best out of it. I'm super grateful that you watched this video. And we'll keep on making videos about music production, building weird instruments and God knows what on these channels. So stay tuned, take care of yourself, breathe, relax. And we'll see you in the next episode. Ciao!